Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's just dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating section of the Quran's second chapter, Al Baqarah. And honestly, it reads like a real-time guide for a brand new community, the early Muslims, as they were navigating some incredibly tricky social and spiritual challenges. It's a story all about words, powerful warnings, and some truly timeless wisdom.
So it all kicks off with this very specific, almost strange command. I mean, just imagine for a second you're a new believer and you get this direct instruction from God. Stop using this one particular word, a word that to you probably seems completely innocent. And that's the big puzzle we're going to solve first. Why this word? What on earth could be so dangerous about the word Rayana that it needed a direct divine intervention to tell people to stop saying it? Well, the answer reveals this hidden battle that wasn't being fought with swords, but with language itself. Okay, to get this, we have to picture the city of Medina at the time. The early Muslim community, they weren't living in a bubble. They were neighbors with other groups, and that included some local Jewish communities who were, let's say, pretty hostile to this new faith. And their hostility was subtle, it was clever, and it was fought using these little linguistic tricks. Now get this, because this is where it gets really interesting. When the Muslims said Ra'ina to the Prophet Muhammad, all they meant was listen to us or consider our point. A totally respectful way to get his attention. But some of the locals were twisting the pronunciation just slightly, making it sound like a Hebrew or Aramaic phrase that meant our shepherd. It was a subtle but nasty way to mock him, a verbal Trojan horse, basically. So what's the divine fix? Well, God doesn't just ban the word and leave it at that. He provides a better one. He tells the believers, okay, instead say unzurna. Now this word means look upon us or give us your attention. It has the exact same respectful meaning, but, and this is the genius part, it couldn't be twisted into an insult. It was linguistically foolproof. And this whole incident is just a brilliant lesson. First, you've got to be precise with your language, especially when there are people just waiting to twist your words. Second, it's a huge lesson in relying on God's guidance instead of trying to win over people who are hostile to you anyway. And finally, it just shows how Revelation was actively working to protect the dignity of the prophet and the entire community. But the attacks, they went deeper than just wordplay. The critics weren't just twisting what believers were saying, they started questioning the consistency of God's words themselves. And this next challenge, it gets right to the heart of how divine guidance actually works over time. This was the big objection, particularly from some of the Jews of Medina. They'd point to things where an earlier command, like the direction of prayer, was later changed by a new one. And to them, this just looked like a flat-out contradiction. You can almost hear them asking, how can a perfect, all-knowing God send a message that keeps changing? It was a really tough question. So the Quran's answer introduces this really profound idea called naskh, or abrogation. And it's so important to get this. This isn't about contradiction. It's about progressive guidance. You can think of it like a doctor changing a patient's medicine as they get healthier. The guidance evolves to fit the needs of the community at that exact moment in time. So here's the divine logic, and it's actually pretty straightforward. 1. A rule is sent down for a specific time and a specific purpose. 2. Later on, God, in his infinite wisdom, replaces it with something that the Quran says is better or similar. And 3, instead of showing weakness, this whole process actually proves God's ultimate authority and wisdom. He's in charge, so he gets to decide what's best for us at any given time. And that brings us to the climax of this whole section, really the biggest challenge of them all. It's a debate that, let's be honest, has been echoing throughout human history. The question of who exactly gets into paradise. The verse just lays the claim out there, plain and simple. At the time, you had different groups making these exclusive claims to salvation. The Quran basically calls this out as a kind of sectarian arrogance. This idea that just by being born into a certain group or following a certain label, you've got a guaranteed ticket to heaven. And the Quran's response is just a total game changer. It dismisses these claims as nothing more than wishful thinking. God makes it crystal clear that salvation isn't a family heirloom. It's not about what you call yourself or who your grandparents were. It's about something way, way deeper. So what is it about? Well, the Quran lays out this universal criteria, and it's built on two incredibly powerful pillars. First, you have to sincerely submit your will to God. And second, you have to be someone who does good in the world. It's all about your inner state and your outward actions, not your group affiliation.
It's a totally merit-based system.
So this entire conversation, tackling mockery, explaining abrogation, and deconstructing claims to salvation, it all builds to this one final, incredibly powerful and pretty sobering reminder. And this is the ultimate lesson, not just for them, but for every single one of us.
Wow. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's the day of judgment, the great equalizer. On that day, who you know, what family you're from, how much money you have, none of it is going to matter. It's a day of pure individual accountability. No one can step in for you, and no one can pay your debt. You're on your own. And here's the final twist. After this long discussion about the history of the children of Israel, reminding them of all their blessings and their mistakes, this exact same warning is turned right back onto the new Muslim community. The message is unmistakable. Do not get complacent. Do not become arrogant. Don't think for a second that your new label of Muslim is some kind of free pass. Your success depends on real, genuine faith and action, not just a title.
And that leaves us with this final, really challenging question. If this whole passage tears down the idea of salvation through a group ID card and replaces it with something so personal and action-based, what does that actually look like? In our day-to-day lives, what does sincere submission and doing good really mean in practice? And that, right there, is the timeless challenge that this divine word war leaves us to figure out.